So today we are unveiling our Salesforce application, and I am joined by Trevor Gibson. I'll let him introduce himself real quick, and then we'll jump in.
Hey, everybody. Thanks all for joining. Great to see you. So I lead the technology function here at Refine Labs. I've been heavily involved in building this Salesforce app. I'm here to help show you what it's all about, answer questions. I'm looking forward to telling you all about it.
Awesome. And I'm Sydney Waterfall, SVP of Growth, Salesforce nerd at heart. So also have been with Trevor kind of helping build this and concepting as well. Really passionate about it. So excited to kind of show you what we've got today. And we will go through, I'm going to go through a couple of slides, and then we're actually going to jump into our demo environment inside of Salesforce and walk through a couple of things. And we'll also have time for some Q&A at the end. We did book an hour. If we need it, all great. If we end early, give you all some time back. That would be awesome. But feel free to, as we go, to drop questions into the chat as you have them, and then we will pick them up at the Q&A. And either Trevor or myself will be able to answer them for you. All right, without further ado, we'll get started here. 1 second, I'll share my screen. All right, so you guys are the first to hear the name. Watchtower is our Salesforce app by Refine Labs, and we're going to go through what it does today. It's a conversion tracking and hybrid attribution solution. So let's get into it. First of all, why did we even build this thing? So we work with a lot of B2B SaaS companies, that's clients of ours, but also consult and work with a lot of people just in the industry. And there were some clear gaps, clear challenges that we saw with majority of the people and companies that we worked with. So when you're adapting a new strategy around creating demand, capturing demand, converting demand, more modern strategy, there was a lot of gaps in people's measurement models. And that's something that if most of our customers had challenges with it, we figured most people had challenges with it. And really being able to measure both create demand and capture demand all the way to revenue, not just at the conversion point. And then the other, kind of systems here, lack of alignment, no standardized way of measuring this new way of doing marketing. So that's essentially kind of why we set out to build a solution to help our customers. So Watchtower, let's get into it. What is it? It's actually a Salesforce application that sits alongside your existing architecture and internal marketing and sales processes within Salesforce. We thought it was very important to complement what you already might be doing, what tech you might already have, and not undergo a huge lift from an infrastructure and implementation process. We've all been there. It's a nightmare. It always takes longer than it needs. So that was something that we wanted to specifically make sure that this app is really easy to implement and doesn't impact your internal fields, your internal workflows, and your internal automations either. And let's jump into what it does. So these are the 4 components that are kind of built on the app. First and foremost, we have hybrid attribution, which is probably the more popular and desired reporting that we've been asked for. So we will go through this, and we're going to show you some dashboards in a couple of minutes of how we look at create demand attribution and also capture demand attribution, and how, which is your typical software-based attribution, and how we're standardizing that as well. Full funnel tracking, I mentioned this in a previous slide, but really understanding unique conversions for a singular person and measuring the outcome of what happened to those conversions, not necessarily the lead or the account level. So that's the kind of concept we'll dig into. And data standardization. So we talk about high intent revenue opportunities, and our definition for that is standardized by a quality control metric of win rate, of 25% or greater. And all of that is standardized and processed in the app, which we'll go through. And then my favorite, standardized reports and dashboards. And lastly, before we jump in, who is this for and what are the technical requirements? This is, again, pretty high level. We've currently designed the app for B2B organizations, have a direct sales motion, and some sort of reoccurring revenue model. And there's different variations of that depending on your business. Not a great fit for traditional, add to cart consumer type of models. That's not what we've designed this for right now. Who knows what will happen in the future, but this is where we're at right now. And then the technical requirements, you have to use Salesforce Enterprise Edition. It is a Lightning app, so you need to be on Lightning. And you need to have a marketing automation system. Doesn't matter what type of system it is, but just make sure that that data is getting synced into Salesforce. And then the use of contact and opportunities in Salesforce. We also support the lead object and the lead to contact conversion and all of that in Salesforce, but technically that is optional if you don't use the lead object in Salesforce. All right, let's jump into it. So I'm going to go through some high-level dashboards in our demo instance, and then Trevor's going to get into some of the components of the application. Let me just make sure here I've got everything set up. This is also our demo instance. So this is, fake data, that we've used. It's not anyone else's data. So I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so out of the box, we've got some dashboards here that we've built. Obviously, everything is customizable, but let's go through it. So this dashboard here is kind of the starting dashboard. We're going to show you at a high level what is each of the funnel stages and what's going on with those funnel stages at a global level. Obviously, you can come in here. We have different pipeline sources that you can filter out. We can configure one pipeline source or all pipeline sources. Just depends kind of where you are at. And this is going to show you the high level, what's going on in the business, what's going on with hero pipeline, closed won, your funnel stages, conversions, qualified meetings, and then your count of heroes as well. Then we have other metrics to look at, like win rate for each of the funnel stages and pipeline velocity metrics like hero win rate, sales cycle, average ARR as well. So this is, again, how I typically use this dashboard with clients is this is the what's going on in the business, high level, put into decks, present to leadership, gives you the high level view. The next dashboard I'm actually going to go into is, well, that's great. This is what's going on all up, but I really want to understand what's going on with create demand and self-reported attribution. So you'll see the dashboard actually looks the same. We have configured it the same with the same exact funnel stages, but we have some additional filters here. So we will go into this in a little bit of how we populate all of this data, but we've got the self-reported attribution category group, which is going to be your high level of categories that we automatically categorize for you based on your how did you hear about us field. Then we have the actual category, and these map to the category groups. So you have a high level view, and then you have a drill down view. So let's just go to LinkedIn, for example, and say I really need to know what's going on with that program. I'm going to drill down into this data. The dashboard's going to update and understand anything that has any conversion meeting or hero opportunity that has the category of LinkedIn. And you'll see that the data updates here. So that's great. We can kind of get a little bit in the weeds here. Going one step further, we also have the same exact dashboard for capture demand, which is by UTM category groups. So you use your existing UTMs, and then we are going to standardize and categorize those for you for easier comparison. So you've got your category group here, and then different categories as well. One thing to note is some of this is customizable as well. Okay, and then the last one, before I pass off to Trevor, is going to be our high-level create demand attribution dashboard. Again, we have the same kind of dashboard for capture demand. You can still filter by all of your pipeline sources here, but this is give you the biggest kind of high-level view of, for close one revenue, what is actually contributing the most to revenue. So in this example, we've got social media and podcast, followed by review sites, and these are going to be the high-level category groups. And then this chart over here is helpful to look at these trends over time. So hopefully, based on your investment and your effort and your programs that you're running, if you're significantly investing in social media and podcasts, we would hope to see that trend goes up over time. You can also see this at the hero pipeline stage. And this is the part that is a game changer, in my opinion, is you can start actually looking at all this data by different dimensions. So we can start looking at win rate, sales cycle length, average ARR, which are all of your pipeline velocity metrics, by these data points: SRA category, SRA category, UTM category group, UTM category. So this is, I don't know, just really exciting for me. Hopefully, it's really hard to get to this data manually, and it takes a lot of time to even be able to do this. So that's kind of the high-level dashboards of what we've built, how they're used. I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to pass it over to Trevor to go through some of the components that power all of these dashboards. Trevor, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Sydney. Great overview. So now I'm gonna pick up where she left off. We were just looking at this dashboard on the screen, and I'm gonna start to talk about how does any of this data get to these dashboards. So first, we're gonna talk about people. So I'm gonna go over to my next tab and look at a contact. As Sydney mentioned earlier, this could just as easily be a lead record. We do support both. And it's going to work the same in either case. And it's going to be generally fed by your marketing automation system, which really generally thinks of leads and contacts as the same kind of thing anyway. So what we're going to see here is a contact, just like any other contact. We have some fields that we introduce. I'm not going to go into the great technical depth of how this all works. You would go through this. We would talk about that in implementation and so on. But what you care about right now is this related list. So this is a related list that shows the individual conversion records that are associated with this contact. Sydney talked earlier about how we want to support each individual journey through from a conversion to a meeting to an opportunity and so on. And we want to be able to do that multiple times for one contact because it may happen in the real world. It's no longer just thinking of the last MQL, the first MQL, or some things we've all been doing in the past. We want to say this person had multiple conversions and here's where each of those conversions ended up. So I'm going to go into a conversion next. Next, we have on the right-hand side information about the conversion itself. So first off, pipeline source. Sydney mentioned this earlier. You saw in the drop downs for the different dashboards a selection of different pipeline sources. We're looking at one that represents pipe, which is that declared intent from the website, someone raising their hand from a contact form. So we can see here, pipeline source is pipe, conversion type is contact form. We can also, if there is a campaign-specific conversion, we can fill in a campaign name here so you can pivot on that information. And then here we see SRA, so that's self-reported attribution. I'm going to skip over this for a moment because we're going to go in greater depth on that in just a moment. But first, I want to talk about UTMs. So this is your UTM information that comes from the visit to the website. You are doing your marketing out there in the world, driving people to the website. your website's capturing that, and we want to have that information on the conversion so that you can know how was that demand captured, where did it come from that ultimately led to filling out that form or other ways of raising their hand. We have a companion script that we can provide that helps you capture those UTM parameters on your website, fill them into the form gets submitted, and it ends up here on the conversion. What you can see here, and Sydney talked a little bit about it, is we have the raw UTMs, but then we also have UTM category and category group. These are customizable for your business. So however you use your UTM parameters, you've got your own strategy already. We then allow you to set the settings behind the scenes in the app to say, my unique UTM source and medium values correspond to these standardized categories and groups. So that helps you use those dashboards that we saw earlier in a pretty clean, easy to use way down to standardized categories. All right, so back to SRA. So we see here, this person wrote in the form on the how did you hear about us field, a colleague turned me on to your podcast. So we would look at this and say, you know, there's probably two things going on here. There's some word of mouth. The colleague is talking to this person and they're telling them about the podcast. So this person says, I was influenced by both the colleague telling me about it and I'm now into your podcast. So what we're going to do here is we're going to apply some predefined rules, which you can also customize for your business. And those rules are going to look at this SRA text, and it's going to pick out SRA categories from that text. So when we scroll to the top of our conversion, we're going to see a tab for SRA categories. Here you can see that we've picked out multiple categories that correspond to this conversion. We picked out podcast and we picked out word of mouth. And so you can then take that information via those dashboards and filter, instead of by some raw text, you can filter by the category of podcast or the category of word of mouth or many, many other possible categories that might pop up in your in the text that people are submitting. Finally, here on the conversion, the sort of last piece of the puzzle when we're talking about the overall journey from a conversion to winning new business, we have our opportunity. So this is a conversion that was a conversion, became a qualified meeting, became an opportunity, and in this case, we can see that that opportunity was closed won. To say, how many heroes did we get? How many closed won? What UTM categories did they come from? What SRA categories did they come from? And so on. So that sort of brings it full circle. You've seen all the components. We looked at the person, a contact with multiple conversions. We looked at a conversion that has all the information from when did it happen to what was the SRA to what was the UTMs. And then we looked at an opportunity that has an attached conversion that has a hero date, and all those things feed back into these dashboards to tell that bigger story of the full journey. And I think that is where I will end it for now.
Awesome. Thank you, Trevor. We already have some questions, and we had a couple of questions submitted in advance. So this question from Ryan Hill, he has to jump, but hopefully we can answer it so he can get the full definition, full answer, not my 2-sentence answer in the chat. He asked, how do you determine the possible definition of a conversion, and is that customizable?
Ooh, good question. So yeah, I'll first answer that by saying it's ultimately customizable by you. That's part of the implementation process. We would work with you to define those things, but conversion generally means someone with declared intent. So this is someone that sales becomes aware of and needs to follow up with. So that can come in a bunch of different flavors. In the pipeline source, that's someone filling out the sales contact form, doing a web chat. There's various ways that they could declare intent. But in other pipeline sources, that might be something different. I won't go into all those because that could be a long discussion, but it's meant to be very customizable, but within sort of guardrails that say, here are the pipeline sources you're trying to work with, and here roughly is how we would say a conversion might happen in those different pipeline sources.
And we do know that kind of pipeline sources and that concept and that methodology is a little newer. So that's one thing that we can help guide you through. Obviously for the pipeline source, it's the most straightforward, but if you're running events, what are those triggers for a lead that's getting over to your sales team and your sales team is working? And, low intent lead gen, if you're running that. Partner is another example of a pipeline source that can be configured as well. So we've set it up to be pretty flexible. But all right, we have a couple more questions. One question submitted in advance is, how does the integration work with Salesforce?
Right. So it is a Salesforce managed package, managed app from the App Exchange. And so, this is a very Salesforce first kind of solution. You are going to install it from the App Exchange. It is going to add our custom objects and fields and all the code and all that behind the scenes. So it's going to live in your instance. All your data lives in your instance. It's not going anywhere else, not being processed anywhere else. And so we're leaning on the Salesforce package to do all that work. It does then rely on you to feed data into it. So that could happen through Salesforce. You could be automating certain things to feed the app with information. It could come from marketing automation. So what happens when the form gets submitted in Marketo or whatever, and that's all feeding into Salesforce. And then the app is going to sort of ingest that and create conversions and track where that conversion goes.
Awesome. We got two people wanting to know this question. How long do you think implementation would be? Does it require having a Salesforce admin? And what does implementation support look like from the Refine Lab side? So Trevor, you want to go first and I can finish
Sure.
up?
Yeah, so it's early days on implementing. We've gone through a few of them, so we have a sense for how long it takes, but everyone is very different. I'll sort of say that up front. Really very much depends on what your environment is like, what team members are available, and the motivation, how much of a priority is it to get it implemented. So it's been sort of all over the map. What I like to say is, if I personally were in there doing it, it would take me about an hour and a half. That's not the realistic answer because there's a lot of players involved. But what I suspect is that we're talking days to weeks, not weeks to months. So it's probably within a month. One would expect if you're actually focused on making this happen, it would be about that.
Yeah, we have a process, kind of a 3-step process, right? We want to make sure everyone in the org is understanding what's going on. You do have to have certain permission sets in Salesforce to be able to install any app from the App Exchange. So you would have to have certain permission sets, whether your admin gives them to you. We guide you all through that. And then it's kind of like a 3-step process. We typically we'll start with 3 meetings, meeting 1, meeting 2, meeting 3, each of them having a succinct objective of let's do this, let's test it, QA it, great, now let's go on to the next step. And that's kind of how we're working that. And the implementation support is actually Trevor and I. So we go like with you through the process, and yeah, we have the implementation guides and documentation to help you along the way as well. So we have another question that was submitted in advance. Feel free to drop any more if you have in the chat. This one was kind of around data sources, and specifically if you'll be able to connect data sources, and will it be able to connect to Segment?
Right. So this one, I think we'll lean back on what we've said earlier, which is that we've designed this thing to be as flexible as it needs to be for your environment. So it's really up to you what data is fed into the app, and it is very very directly in Salesforce, as we covered a little bit ago. And so in the case for something like Segment, which is aggregating data from a bunch of different sources, as long as your Salesforce is hooked up to Segment, then theoretically, yeah, you can integrate with those other things. We would see most integrations happening the other way, really. So where the app is in Salesforce, it's expecting to ingest data from other places, whether that is your Salesforce itself or other platforms that are feeding Salesforce. That's how I would generally see this happening. If you have data elsewhere, as long as that data can make it into Salesforce, you could feed it into our app as well. So if you have something that's collecting some information that should be relevant to conversions, get it into Salesforce through whatever hopefully native connection exists already, and then we can wire things up so that the conversion becomes aware of those things. So that's my general answer. Everyone's different. But that's the point, is it's pretty flexible to take whatever you can throw at it.
Yeah, one thing that we've learned with some of our beta customers and even customers that we work with at Refine Labs is the need for some flexibility and adoption, or else it won't, it's going to get hard lined at your ops team if it's not going to be flexible and relatively easy and lightweight to implement. The other good thing is the reason it's in an application with its own fields and its own automations is so that it doesn't affect any of your own internal automations and things that are set up. So you can change your fields, you can maintain all of your workflows and automations. And this is kind of separate so that those don't, collide or cross wires, which is a Salesforce admin's nightmare. So
Right.
That's kind of the founding behind how we've designed it and how we've built it. So, okay, any other questions? We can answer whatever you'd like. Okay, if you feel free to drop in the chat if you have any last minute things. If you are interested in learning more, getting a more technical demo, going into conversations around how this would actually work in your specific environment, you can reach out to me. I'll drop my calendar link in. Oh, pricing, good one. Just that we're on it. So yeah, we are onboarding about 5 to 8 customers. We're doing a slower onboarding to make sure that the implementation goes really well and you guys have our full attention, and we make sure it's a positive, great experience for everybody. So the pricing is an annual subscription at $10,000 for an annual license. No seats, nothing else like that. It's just one flat fee, and you get the app for a year, which includes obviously all of the releases, the other features and components we plan to release throughout the year, and all of that. So it's one flat fee for the app and the organization.
Yep, and that of course includes us supporting you through it and all that. No add-ons, as she said.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. And we will follow up via email, and just shoot me a message if you're interested, and we will get you set up.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.